Story 1: Shingles. Had a breakout on my lower back about 7 years ago. For those who have never experienced this, imagine peeling back your skin to expose your nerve endings, pouring a flammable liquid on them, and lighting a match. You'll get somewhat of an idea of how intense this pain is. My dad took me to the emergency room where they gave me a shot of morphine, which didn't do much. They had to administer Dilaudid and nearly knocked me out. Even then, the pain didn't fully go away. Story 2. 3 hours after eating the last meal, I ate before needing my gallbladder removed. I legitimately thought I was dying, and it's the first and only time I requested a prescription-strength heavy painkiller. Story 3. Migraine that lasted 4 days. I've had headaches that lasted months, but that migraine had me unable to think or speak or do much of anything. Finally went to the hospital on the 4th day. They were able to reduce the pain to almost half, and of course I was dehydrated as well. Story 4. Acute appendicitis. I almost died that day because the doctors thought it was just a regular bellyache. I had an intravenous drip for 4 hours straight while the pain kept getting worse and I kept vomiting. I had nothing left in my stomach, so I was just throwing up clear liquid. It almost burst, but luckily a doctor happened to walk by, saw what was happening, and quickly figured out what was wrong. Story 5. Deep vein thrombosis in my mesenteric vein went undiagnosed correctly for over a month, resulting in 2/3 of my small intestine dying in the meantime. That was quite a wild ride. I was in and out of the general practitioner and hospital several times, being told it was just gastritis and sent back home, only to return to the hospital when I couldn't keep anything down without immediately vomiting. When I was admitted, I discreetly checked the height of the hospital room window to consider my options, as I wasn't looking forward to this continuing much longer. They weren't very generous with painkillers because mystery pain and asks for stronger pain medication seemed suspicious to them. I hope they felt a little guilty about that one after figuring out what was actually happening. Story 6. I was hit by a car and ended up in the hospital with broken ribs and a collapsed lung. The first night, they had to insert a tube between my ribs to drain the chest cavity. They rolled me onto my side, numbed my skin, and made an incision. Then they inserted a tube between my ribs. It was the worst pain I have ever experienced. There was a young nurse in the room during that time. Story 7. I had a really bad infection in my tooth, which caused extreme pain and gum swelling. I had to get it removed, but because of the swelling, the local anesthesia did not work, so the dentist had to pull my tooth out, and I could basically feel the whole thing. I almost fainted at one point because I was in so much pain. I've been absolutely terrified to go to the dentist since. I have gone ever since, but was absolutely terrified of it. I just wanted the damn thing out because it was a lot of nerve pain for me. Story 8. Migraine. It isn't strictly a headache, but an entire body process. Pain shooting up from the affected side's shoulder and neck, through that side of the head, sometimes leading to nausea and vomiting. It's the kind of pain that keeps you from working, sleeping, or enjoying various hobbies, unless pacing the floor is considered a hobby. Story 9. I've had many broken bones, 2 cesarean sections, many bad ear infections, gallbladder attacks and surgery, uterine biopsy, a severe burn with nerve damage, and a liver and kidney transplant. Nothing, and I mean nothing, could compare to a weekend abscessed front tooth that had a crown on it. That was back when the dentist was not available on the weekend, and the emergency room gave antibiotics but no pain medication unless you were a drug addict. They can always seem to get them. Story 10. In grade school, somewhere around the summer, I was wearing shorts during break and playing tag with someone. A ball came rolling from my right to my left, and in a split second, I decided to jump over it. I stepped directly on the ball, and my knees scraped for around 2 meters over the stone tiles. I still felt the pain hours later and could not keep my legs straight for hours as well. To this day, the skin on my knees is a bit red and rough. Story 11. The abdominal pain coupled with testicular pain and lightheadedness was the worst I have ever felt. I have broken bones countless times, compound fractures too. They did not even come close. Story 12. Toothache. The pain just turns on. I basically curled up in the fetal position until it went away enough so I could function enough to get it pulled. Heat stroke or exhaustion was the worst I ever felt. It was my first day landscaping, and it was sunny and hot. That day, I learned I should be wearing a hat so the sun doesn't scramble my brain. I was sweating, shivering, had chills, was hot, confused, nauseous, and had cramps. Food poisoning also rates high for worst experiences. No person should have to experience the double dragon. Puking and having diarrhea at the same time. Edit. My wife informed me there is a triple threat or triple dragon. Add a period to that, lol. Glad I'm a guy. Story 13. Pinched nerve at the base of my neck and top of spine. Anytime I moved, I had pain shooting all across my body. My wife, now ex-wife, thought I was faking because I didn't want to eat Thanksgiving dinner with her family. Story 14. Thumb arthritis surgery was the most painful recovery ever. Now I've had knee replacement done. Shoulder and bicep incorrectly worked on. I've had a torn meniscus on my left knee. I've had lower back surgery and cervical surgery as well. I also had a full hysterectomy done. That thumb felt like a sledgehammer was hitting it constantly. The throbbing pain was terrible. My hand was a claw. Had to go to physical therapy for learning to use fingers again. Story 15. Had a boil on my lower abdomen. I know people think boils are sore but usually tolerable, but this one was something else. It was so painful it made my eyesight blurry. I tried to cut it out with a knife. It was so painful. I drove myself to the emergency room to get hooked up to pain medications, and even after the drip, my pain level was still about a 7 out of 10. 2 days of peak pain, and to make it worse, I was moving house, so I had to pack and transport stuff. Traumatic memory. Story 16:1. I cut my finger trying to catch a plate while washing dishes. The plate broke and I got a deep cut. It's a small mark on my finger, but you can tell that's new skin that grew. 2. I had the flu and pneumonia this winter. It was terrible. 3. Every time I stub my toe on the lower part of my bed, it hurts. Story 17. Pulled a muscle in my shoulder doing next to nothing. I had spinal surgery about 10 years ago, and the pain went right across into the top of my back. Worse than the pain of the spinal surgery itself. Story 18. I mentioned this in another post. I got very bad sunburns across my arms and legs. The pain was constant and excruciating. Worst of all, the pain made me itch all over the burnt areas, and if I itched, it would become worse and worse. That pain lasted 4 days straight. Story 19. I have given birth to 2 children, but a burst appendix, which a doctor insisted was pain from irritable bowel syndrome, got a whole lot worse and was excruciating, topping everything I've ever experienced. Story 20. The sharp, knife-like pain from every movement due to a compressed nerve is quite horrible. However, the only thing that made me cry out in pain for a while was when my thigh muscle cramped. A very strong muscle that regularly lifts 250 kilograms. I'm very fat, not a weightlifter. Fought against itself. Story 21. Breaking my foot was brutal, but the runner-up experience has been fentanyl shots. I go days without going until I finally have to push out what feels like a baseball with razor blades. When I wipe, there's no poop, only blood. Edit. It clogs the toilet every time. Story 22. Appendicitis was up there. I was hours from bursting. But passing gallstones is number 1. I had my gallbladder removed hours later as it was failing. I sat in the emergency room for 4 hours unattended. Worse than 32 hours of back labor with a failed epidural. So much worse. Story 23. Ruptured ovarian cyst. I was temporarily blinded by pain. My lovely parents thought I was being dramatic. They eventually took me to the hospital, and I'll never forget that feeling of my first shot of Demerol. Story 24. Ovarian blood cyst rupturing. The pain just went on and on for weeks, and you cannot do anything about it. You just have to let your body reabsorb the blood. Story 25. Gluteus maximus tear along with right and left side hip bursitis. I had to have surgery to repair all that. 2 surgeries on the gluteus maximus. It was hanging on by a thread, they said. Doctors have no idea how that happened, and neither do I. My doctor had only seen it one other time before me. Recovery was difficult. Story 26. A nurse tried to take out stitches and did not do it well. I think she just tugged at one and I was nearly sick. The nurse who actually took them out 2 weeks later was complaining about how sloppy her work was. She also gave me Skittles. Story 27. When my Crohn's disease was not treating me well, I got peritonitis, leading to perforation of the intestinal tract near the ileum, resulting in needing an ileostomy. That was a stomach ache I would never wish upon anyone. Story 28. I had cluster headaches a few years back. It was the worst pain I have ever experienced. I ended up using 2 weeks of paid time off in a month. Most of that I was at work but unable to do anything. Also known as suicide headaches, it gives me anxiety just thinking about that time. YouTube has videos of people getting them. It's bizarre. Story 29. Welder's eye flash. It's like someone threw coarse sand in your eyes, but you can't get it out. Opening your eyes is almost impossible, and so is keeping them closed. The doctor said to use eye drops and keep on sunglasses, but because I have long eyelashes, they kept hitting the glasses, which in turn caused more pain. I'm telling you, that was the longest night of my life. I couldn't even call my boss to tell him I couldn't come in. I just couldn't open my eyes to read the screen on my phone. This was still in the era before smartphones. Story 30. Asian giant hornet without a doubt. Stepped on one with bare feet and was stung multiple times. Pethidine, morphine, and eventually heroin over 24 hours barely alleviated the pain. Conefish, cobblers, redback spiders, and other spiders barely register on the pain intensity scale. It left a 20 millimeters circumference and 15 millimeters deep necrotic tissue that took almost 2 years to heal. Story 31. When I was younger, I used to skateboard a lot. One day, while I was trying to go down a ramp, I slipped off my board and landed on the sole of my right foot, causing the bone in my leg to be shoved up and out of my knee, exposing everything. That hurt like hell, and I had to learn how to walk on it again after surgery, which took about 1 year. Story 32. Shingles of my left eye at 25 years old. Imagine chickenpox coming up through your optic nerve. Worse, they couldn't figure out what it was for 4 weeks because it was a strange presentation with no visual signs of shingles. They were telling me multiple sclerosis or acquired immunodeficiency syndrome. So not only are you in excruciating pain, but they tell you have a permanent underlying illness. Story 33. That time I stubbed my big toe in the exact same place I stubbed it a few days prior. A close second is the bacterial infection I got after brain surgery that resulted in intracranial swelling. Story 34. Had the worst discomfort, and it's kind of the icebreaker for me losing my virginity. She got on top. Tears of joy in one eye, tears of pain out the other eye. Story 35. I had muscle spasms and scoliosis for 2 years after falling down the stairs and didn't know, so the pain just kept increasing. I thought I heard my recently returned from the hospital dad cry out for help upstairs. I jumped out of bed and ran upstairs to find out he had just yawned. The adrenaline wears off, and the back pain is so bad I have to switch to manual breathing because my brain is too scared of the pain to breathe. I went to urgent care the next day, and that doctor was upset that my general practitioner had never done an x-ray and just gave me a week of muscle relaxers every few months for the flare-ups. He pretty much made it seem like if she had tested me for anything at all or paid any attention at all, she would have seen what was wrong, and I would have been pain-free 2 years earlier. I switched general practitioners after that and still deal with back pain if I dare to be active at all. Story 36. Labor was definitely the worst physical pain I have ever experienced. The combination of contractions and the pressure was overwhelming, and it felt like an emotional roller coaster. It is incredible what the body can endure during that time, but looking back, I remember how intense and exhausting it was. Story 37. I have a terrible back with 5 damaged discs of varying degrees and have been offered surgery. Before my wedding in 2017, I let my wife, who is in dentistry, convince me to do teeth whitening. Her boss used an old bleach whitening method on my teeth with a blood red paste. Normally, it's on for 10 to 15 minutes, I think. However, they started doing paperwork, and basically, an hour went by while I was watching something on the ceiling TV. I guess they realized it was way too long and rushed to take it off. Let me tell you that I've never had nerve pain like this in my life. Every breath caused my face to shudder with pain and twitches, and for the next 3 days, I barely ate, couldn't sleep, and drank warm water through a straw. Story 38. What I assume was a migraine the other night. About 8 hours of incredible pain, mostly in my eye and ear on one side. I considered going to the emergency room but did not want to get stuck with a $10,000 bill. Obviously, no drugs I had at home made any dent, and icing was likewise ineffective. It just stopped on its own. I hope it does not happen again anytime soon. Story 39. Pancreatitis. I almost died and am now a diabetic. They say it is worse than giving birth and is one of the worst pains. It is very serious. It was alcohol-induced. I quit drinking. Story 40. Every 4 weeks, I experience the worst pain I've ever felt repeatedly. I've seriously considered suicide. That's how much it hurts. It feels as if someone is stabbing me in the abdomen repeatedly for hours, while someone else is flossing my insides with barbed wire, and another person is giving me electric shocks. Fever, delirium, screaming, crying, begging. I've done it all, and it just never lets up. Pain medications don't even alleviate the pain. Story 41. I suffered from a pneumothorax of my left lung after a head-on collision car accident. I would get these chest tensions at night in the emergency room that would last about 5 to 10 minutes. The pain was so bad I could not even talk or move. It was one of the only times in my life I thought being dead would be better than feeling that pain.